Welcome to the Politicrat. I am Omar Moore. It is Sunday, August the 23rd, 2020.
This goddamn tweet and the lying, oh my God, I'm talking too freely, but the change of stories, the lack of preparation, the lying, the holy but he's appealing to the base, what they're doing with the kids at the border.
That was the voice of Maryanne Trump Barry, the older sister of Donald Trump. And you heard how she feels about Donald Trump loud and clear. That was audio from 15 hours worth of recordings surreptitiously done by Mary Trump. She, of course, is the niece of Donald Trump and the niece of Maryanne Trump Barry. Of course, as you know, Mary Trump wrote a book that was released last month entitled, well, it's a great title for a book, Too Much and Never Enough. The blockbuster bestseller, is literally flying off the shelves. And all of the audio that you are going to hear during the course of this episode of The Politicrat was not contained in the book. The focus of this episode, Maryanne Trump Barry, and her views on her own brother. That and a brief preview of the Republican National Convention. Well, this will be a quick episode. Coming up next. Welcome back. So yesterday, the Washington Post's Michael Kranish dropped a bombshell in a post with a story entitled, "In secretly recorded audio, President Trump's sister says he has, quote, no principles, end quote, and, quote, you can't trust him, end quote." When that article appeared across social media and everywhere else, it ignited a real storm of conversation. The president's own sister, Donald Trump's own sister, Maryanne Trump Barry, dropped the dime on Donald. Quite frankly, she says everything that we already know about Donald Trump. But you will still hear the 5 audio recordings that were released to the Washington Post. Or at least, I should say, the ones that they chose to publish. Because apparently, Mary Trump, who, as you know, wrote a book on Donald Trump called Too Much and Never Enough, which is a smash hit bestseller, had recorded 15 hours of audio with her aunt, Maryanne Trump Barry, surreptitiously in New York, which is not a crime because New York allows for someone to record a telephone conversation or any other conversation as long as they are a participant in that conversation. The other person does not need to give their consent to be recorded. Out here in California, on the other hand, both parties must give their consent to be recorded in a conversation. But in New York, Mary Trump was able to take advantage of the law that does not require that in New York State And so for 15 hours during the course of 2018 and 2019, in face-to-face conversations with her aunt Maryanne, Mary Trump was able to surreptitiously record their conversations. And Michael Cranish writes the story, and he includes these 5 pieces of audio, part of which I have just played to you to start this episode, and the rest of which I will be playing during this episode of The Politicrat. What's interesting is if you read that story, and I encourage you to go to the Washington Post at washingtonpost.com and read the story by Michael Cranish. His last name is spelled K-R-A-N as in Nancy, I-S as in Sam, H as in Harry. And you will see a photo that is taken by someone at the Associated Press from 1990. The photo is from April the 6th of that year. And what you have is on the left-hand side, Donald Trump is flanking his mother and his father. And from the right-hand side, you see Maryanne Trump Barry. And she's flanking her parents as well. And she's looking across at Donald Trump, and the look on her face, it just fits. It really does. It fits the enmity that obviously they have between them. There is no love lost between these two. Donald Trump in the photo is waving at somebody or whatever, and he just has his face in this ridiculous kind of pose, like he's shouting out to somebody as if to say, yoo-hoo! And he's got that same red tie that he always wears that's way too long for him. It's like this overcompensation that he's doing. But in that photo, Maryanne Trump Barry is cutting her eyes at Donald. She is 9 years older than Donald at 83 years of age, and she used to be a federal court judge. She stepped down from that position, I believe, last year or perhaps in 2018. I always get my years mixed up between those 2 years when it comes to some of the events that I talk about, but it was either last year or the year before. She was being investigated for an alleged tax evasion or tax fraud, something of that nature. And what she did, rather than have a protracted investigation go on of her while she was on the federal bench, she decided to resign. And that's what she did. And she had been on the bench since 1981. So she had served the better part of almost 40 years on the bench. What you will hear, or I should say the points that really come through, are 2 things when you listen to these audio clips. Number 1, that Donald Trump is not liked by people in his family. The Trump family hates Donald Trump. And I guess part B of that number 1 point is that it is a highly dysfunctional family. Perhaps you or somebody you know knows the feeling well about dysfunction in families. It is a very common thing. Some of the dysfunction is far deeper and more severe in families than it is in others. And on the spectrum of 0 to 10, the dysfunction in the Trump family is at 12. So that's the twin number 1 points that come out of listening to this audio. And number 2, what comes out of listening to this audio is white male privilege and the ability of a rich white man to fail upward in this system because the system protects him. If you are rich, white, and male, the system has your back because you created that system. As a rich white male, you benefited from the system you created. So he could have people take exams for him. He could have a president of the United States call in a favor, or have a high-powered, ruthless attorney like Roy Cohn, the scum of the earth, call up a president and do a favor for scum of the earth number 2. And he could still fail miserably and still be promoted to become the commander-in-chief of this country, even though he has been wretchedly miserable for 50 years of his life. Even though he's been a racist, even though he's been a misogynist, even though he is still both of those things, even though he's cruel, even though he is callous, and now even though about 180,000 people in the United States of America have died from coronavirus on his watch and based on his deliberate and willful non-action. You get to fail upward. If you're a white man in America, you get to fail upward. Especially if you are a rich white man. If you're a police officer, you can shoot as many black people as you want, and you still get promoted, and you still get reassigned and keep your position, and you go to some other police department, I guess. You get hired like the guy who killed Tamir Rice. You didn't have to be a rich white man. If you're a white male, period, you can fail upward. You can murder as many black and brown people as you like. And you can rest assured knowing that you are not going to go anywhere near a jail. You'll be lucky if you get handcuffs placed on you. You'll be lucky if you get charged. Just ask the 3 cops who murdered Breonna Taylor, none of whom have had even any charges brought against them. And this is over 5 months ago that they murdered Breonna Taylor while she was asleep in her home. And that's the biggest point that comes out of these tapes for me, these audio clips that I'm going to be playing you. And then on top of that, the denial. Donald Trump's excessive lying and his denial of everything. Denial that he had help in his life. Denial that his father gave him all this money and he still failed, and then he still got promoted, and then a bank like Deutsche Bank still gave him billions of dollars. This is what happens when you're a white male in this country and indeed around the world. You get affirmative action daily. Even when you screw up, even when you fail, even when you harass women, even when you rape women, you get promoted to lieutenant, to corporal, to general. While the woman that you raped in the military gets shunned, ostracized, threatened, put in harm's way, demoted, tossed out of the military. These white men fail upward. And that is really the moral, if you can call it one, of the story of these tapes. Even when members of your own family castigate you for the soulless, psychopathic piece of filth that you are, you continue to fail upward. To the point in which you are potentially that much closer to a second term in the White House, All of which brings me to this point. And that is to say that it is essential that you get out and vote early. That you early vote, that you make sure that you are registered to vote right now, that you make sure that you check your voter registration, that you pass on that information to your friends and your family, and that you know exactly what you need to do to vote and what kind of photo ID you will need. We have to work very hard to make sure that Donald Trump is not only banished from the White House, but that he is banished from public life. I don't need to hear from rappers telling me all this kind of garbage about, well, the Democrats aren't offering you anything. Well, the Democrats are offering you something. And the Democrats have offered us things. We need to continue to push the Democrats, just like we need to push any party. And what some of these people who make statements on Twitter or Instagram fail to understand is that the struggle is continuous. And you don't have to ask people for something. You have to demand it and take it. And you have to take to the streets. And you have to strategize. And you have to vote. And you have to keep in contact with the people who represent you in your district. Democracy is an ongoing thing. And it is only as strong or as weak as the number of people who participate or who do not participate in it. So if you're sitting there telling people that follow you, well, what have the Democrats done? And you have the tenacity and the audacity to conveniently ignore all of the facts over the last 2 years that the House of Representatives under Democratic leadership have passed all of these bills in the House that would benefit you, me, and everyone we know, including many other black people in general, much less anybody else. And you fail to understand that, and you fail to understand that the Republicans are sitting on their duffs. Mitch McConnell sitting on his backside in the bluegrass state, while those bills that the House of Representatives have passed since the beginning of 2019 are gathering dust on McConnell's desk. Then you just have to look in the mirror at your own ignorance, your own willful blindness. You are a walking, talking advertisement. These rappers, some of whom are just acting the fool right now. You are a walking, talking advertisement for Donald Trump. And instead of sounding every bit the ignoramus that you are, may I dare suggest that you actually read and you actually do some research and you actually have some kind of strategy and you actually tell people to go out and vote rather than talking all this nonsense and foolishness and looking like a total ass. May I suggest to you to use your platform for something positive. And stop spreading filth and misinformation. You're well off, you're comfortably well off, and maybe Putin paid you some freaking rubles or whatever the hell the currency is in Russia. And now you're going to get on Twitter and look like a fool. And play the fool. And buck dance. And talk nonsense. Don't be that fool. Don't be that person. Educate yourself right now. Get out there and vote. I'll be right back with the audio. Welcome back. People have to understand, and I'm sure you do right now, that Donald Trump is empty. He has got absolutely nothing. He is an absolute zero, and if you looked at him, you would see he has no soul or heart whatsoever, no ideology at all. He speaks to himself, and he is only about himself. And so he will view anybody as a stepping stone, a so-called transaction to get through or make or pass through or buy off or lie about to get to what he wants to get to, which is to enrich himself in some way. And that's been the same throughout his entire life. He doesn't care about his supporters, and the supporters don't care that he doesn't care about them. They care about him, and that is all that counts to them. I do appeal to the consciences of everyone out there who knows a Trump supporter. It is too late. Stop trying to convert these individuals. If they want to vote for him, they're going to vote for him. What you need to do, instead of trying to convert or convince someone who is not going to be converted or convinced, for you to instead channel your energy in getting people registered to vote or in educating people in voter outreach. It's very important. I mean, this is really where the work gets done. Here's tape number 1, audio number 1. Maryanne Trump Barry talking too freely, and she's talking about Donald's tweets.
This goddamn tweet and the lying. Oh my God, I'm talking too freely, but it is the change of stories, the lack of preparation, the lying, the holy. But he's appealing to the base, what they're doing with the kids at the border. I mean,
the goddamn tweet and the lying. Oh my God, I'm talking too freely. Yeah, well, loose lips supposedly sink ships, but in the Trump household, they aren't a ship. There aren't any ships whatsoever, because everybody, I don't know, they are on an iceberg that just never melts. I mean, the coldness. I've never heard of a family that doesn't have any kind of love, only contempt and envy and suspicion. That's a broken family. And that is the sad part of it. And one of the things that Mary Trump talks about in her book is that there's a real emptiness about the family that she is part of. No love at all. No love was shown. And, maybe her father was very loving and kind, but generally speaking, in that family, there was nothing of encouragement. It was all about fighting each other and being suspicious and lying and putting people down. And what a miserable existence. It was obviously gloomy. And that tape, that's how your sister talks about you? This would not have been that much of a news story at all had it been Scaramucci or even Steve Bannon. As racist as Steve Bannon is, it wouldn't have been a news story of any consequence, really. But the fact that just before this RNC convention that's coming up on Monday, and I'll preview it, well, there's not much to preview, is there? But I will be previewing the RNC coming up a little bit later. But the fact that these tapes drop just before it, it's the most delicious timing if you are someone who supports Joe Biden or if you're the Joe Biden campaign, because you know that by the time this convention begins, or even before the time that it begins tomorrow, there will already be half a dozen to a dozen or more ads all across the internet and on television with this audio that you are hearing now on this episode. I mean, that is like a divine intervention. And I'm not saying that these pieces of audio are going to make a difference to the election. But what I think they could do is certainly cement independent support and independence in the suburbs and moderate Republicans all over the place who just will not be able to live with themselves. And while there will be a cross-section of evangelicals sticking with Trump, there will be some who won't. When you've got your own direct family members saying these things about you, I mean, it was rough enough as far as I'm sure Donald Trump was concerned when his niece was saying these things about him. And she warned that democracy would be destroyed if he was able to steal another term. And that's his niece saying this. I don't know what more people in this country need to hear to know that Donald Trump hates America and hates Americans, and that he would be an abject disaster. You can clearly see over these first 3.5+ years that he has not accomplished anything except to destroy this country and buddy with Russia and the enemies and Putin and all these dictators, while completely trashing the United States and really putting a flame to the country. I mean, I think that's really obvious. That's no conspiracy theory. That's no hoax. That's real facts. Putting bounties. You let Russia put bounties on the heads of American sons and daughters who fight in the military, and you don't do anything about that? You can't be someone who loves America if you are allowing an adversary, or anybody, but an adversary like Russia, to put bounties on the heads of men and women and others here in the United States who are Americans or who are in the military specifically. And you don't do anything to counter that? Here's tape number 2. Maryanne Trump Barry revealing that Donald Trump, as we had known and as had been said in Mary Trump's book, Donald Trump did not take his exams. Donald Trump had someone else taking his exams for him.
Well, he's always been this way. I mean, I guess. I mean,
But he was a tough kid, right?
he was a brat.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't mean tough at all.
They sent him
I mean,
off to
a brat,
reform
or
school.
temper tantrums,
I
whatever.
drove him around New York City to try to get him into college. He ended up in Fordham. I got him in somehow. Before I had any real Catholic roots.
Right.
But I mean, I didn't get him in, but I know he didn't get into college. And he went to Fordham for 1 year, and then he got into University of Pennsylvania. I guess he had somebody take the exams.
No way.
And
He had somebody take his entrance exams?
SATs or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. You're kidding.
That's what I believe. I even remember the name.
Oh, man.
But then he,
I mean, not that I'm shocked,
but
but
now when he does stories, he never mentions Fordham.
of course not.
Oh my God.
No, he went to the Wharton School, which also isn't true. He didn't go. He went to the University of Pennsylvania.
Went to University of
And took
Pennsylvania.
a couple of classes, I guess, at Wharton. Oh, that's insane.
But that's him. So, and he, I did his homework for him. I mean,
It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. You really can't script this kind of stuff. Now, the operative value of these tapes are quite big for Mary Trump, who recorded them surreptitiously because she had been stiffed, according to the story by Michael Krasnich. I mean, she had been really stiffed. Michael Kranish. I mean, Mary Trump had been stiffed. There was an inheritance dispute, and that dispute was settled almost 20 years ago now. But Mary Trump had been saying that, look, I mean, I've been duped into this agreement. And the Trump family had actually devalued the property, said the estate was worth $30 million. And yet she had believed through, I guess, documents that she knew of, that the actual value of this estate was $1 billion. So she had started to record family members. But here's a tape you got to listen to. Donald Trump is somebody who always does this. And I told you, as you know, this is not really a story. In yesterday's episode, I told you that Donald Trump is a fraud. You know that. I know that. We all know that's not a secret. It's an open secret. And so this tape now with Maryanne Trump Barry speaking with Mary Trump, who is recording all of this, unbeknownst to Maryanne Trump Barry. She talks about how Donald Trump likes to take credit for things he hasn't done. And he does this all the time. He does it in the administration when he lies and says, oh, I did this stuff. You remember when he signed that bogus and unconstitutional executive order a couple of Saturdays ago now? And he said, oh, you know, this Veterans Care, and I always get this wrong, this Veterans Cares Act, you know, I'm the first person to sign this. It's never been done before. I'm the first person to sign this into law. When that's not true. President Obama did in 2014. Donald Trump's MO all the time throughout his life is to lie and take credit for things he did not do. He said this with the economy. Oh, yeah, the economy is stronger because of me. It was Obama. And what was happening is that Trump was riding the wave off of the Obama recovery. That's what was happening there. And yet he's saying, well, it's my economy. I took... No. But this is Donald Trump. So listen to this audio. Maryanne Trump Barry tells a similar story.
he once tried to take credit for me. Well, where would you be without me? I said, you say that one more time, I will level you. Jesus. Because in 1981, he had Roy Cohn call Reagan, who had to be a woman appointed to in New Jersey to a federal court, because Reagan's running for re-election, and he was desperate for the female vote. I mean, I said, you had Cohn make one phone call, and I've done everything since then. Did you make Chief Justice Rehnquist appoint me the head criminal judge? No, he didn't. No. You ever mention that one more time, I will wipe you out, and I would.
Maryanne Trump Barry does not play about, and clearly does not suffer fools gladly. And she stood up to her brother, and as the older sister, she certainly should be. I will level you. I would have loved to have seen the look on Donald Trump's face when Maryanne Trump Barry said that to him. I would just love to have seen the look on his face. And here's another piece of audio that also confirms something that we all know about Donald Trump, is that he is a selfish human being self-centered, narcissistic, malignant narcissist. And he only cares about himself, and we all know that. And here's Maryanne Trump Barry saying exactly that.
But anyway, no, I mean, and Donald's out for Donald, period. When he started to say something to me, boy, look at what I've done for you. And I said, you have done nothing. Deliberately. I have never asked him for a favor since 1981, when I was being highly considered to go in the federal court on my own merits. I never used the name Trump. It was never part of my makeup.
Right.
Until John and I got married, I had to make the transition. But long story being short, Reagan was the president, and can you ask Roy Cohn, to call Reagan, because they were like kissing buddies. The next day I had the nomination. I probably would have gotten it on the merits anyway. Reagan was running for re-election. He needed a woman.
A woman, yeah.
And I was top government prosecutor in the United States.
Yeah.
Donald's out for Donald. Period. Oh, man. Donald Trump must have listened to these audio tapes. He must have listened to these audio clips. There's no way that he couldn't have. They were played on CNN, they were played on MSNBC, and I'm sure they were played on Fox. There's no chance. They're all over the internet, over Twitter, they're in the Washington Post online. There's no way on God's green earth that he did not hear these audio tapes. He is a consumer of media. He may not read, but he definitely listens to media. He watches Fox all the time. And he's obviously on Twitter, so he had to have come across these audio clips. I'm sure in one hand was his phone or his laptop, and then the other side or in the distance was the television that had Fox News on it. And speaking of which, listen to this tape. Maryanne Trump Barry recalling the time that she was speaking to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump had actually called her and asked her if she watched Fox News. Listen to this.
He called and he said, "Did you watch Fox News?" I said, "No." "Why not?" I said, "I don't watch much television at all." Pause. "What do you do?" "I read." Pause. "What do you read?" "Books." "You don't watch Fox?"
Did you watch Fox News? You don't watch Fox? Really? Oh my goodness. This guy, he is a dope. He is an absolute doofus. I mean, my goodness me, man. Everybody who's worked with him has said that about him. Everybody. John Kelly, Rex Tillerson. I mean, everybody now, of course, granted they're no longer in the administration, but they've all talked about how this guy's a moron, he's stupid, he's an idiot. I mean, at least 5 or 6, former Trump administration officials have all gone on record or been quoted as saying, whether it's on record or whatever, they've all gone on record and said, this guy is a bloomin' idiot. He never reads anything. I mean, Miles Taylor, the former DHS, Department of Homeland Security Chief of Staff, said as much. I'll have to play you that audio sometime soon. You just have to listen to that. So this guy doesn't read anything. We knew that about him. He doesn't watch Fox News. He watches Fox News, and that's about all. And he may watch some of the other stuff. But this guy's a train wreck. But yet he's got the key to the nuclear codes. He's got the nuclear codes. This guy. This is why we've got to get rid of him. You've got to get him out of the White House. Get rid of him in terms of removing him from the White House by voting. That's what I mean by getting rid of him. He cannot stay in the White House. He told you last week that he wanted to run for an additional 4 years if he won in November. This guy will not leave at all. If he wins this election or steals it, he is not going to leave the White House at all when he's finished with the second 4 years. And by the way, the country will not look anything like it looks even now. I just think it's imperative for people to understand what's at stake here. This isn't about Democrats and Republicans at this stage. It's about whether we're going to have a country or whether we're not. That's what this is about. And it's never a good idea to put people in power who are narcissistic, who are thin-skinned, who are very reactionary, and who do not have a degree of intelligence or common sense about them, or who are erratic. And clearly Donald Trump is. He changes his mind every 3 seconds about something. He's unsettled, he's not focused, and he's not rational. And he lies all the time. It's not a good recipe to have someone like that in power, in the highest seat of power in the land, on the planet. It's just not a good idea. And yet this country has done that. So we really need to not take anything for granted for this election. We have to work our butts off. And that work begins right now. If Donald Trump's sister, Maryanne Trump Barry, can make it clear that she clearly makes it clear that she thinks her brother is an absolute disaster and appalling, then that should tell you everything you need to know, since she is his older sister. Next, a preview of the RNC convention. That was the opening for Spike Lee's Jungle Fever. Yusuf Hawkins was honored before that film's opening credits began. When Spike Lee's Jungle Fever was released in 1991, you got that Universal logo tune that you just heard, followed by a few seconds of a blank screen, followed by a brief 3 or 4 seconds of a photograph of Yusuf Hawkins. Yusuf Hawkins was a young black man who on August the 23rd, 1989, decided to go along with his friends, one of whom answering an ad in a newspaper for a used car, to Bensonhurst on a Wednesday night in the summer of 1989. Only 2 of those 3 young men returned home to their Brooklyn neighborhoods. Yusuf Hawkins did not make it home from Bensonhurst. He was shot in the heart. The white male who shot him served, I believe, and still is serving or was serving, a 30-year sentence. He may still be in prison. Yusuf Hawkins was a bright light, a young lad who had all of his future ahead of him. He was going places in the world. He was beloved. He had purpose, he had joy, he had insight. And even if he had had none of those things, his life mattered. Never forget Yusuf Hawkins. This is a very difficult day, and I send my condolences and my heartfelt prayers to Diane Hawkins, that's the mother of Yusuf Hawkins, and all of the Hawkins family. May Yusuf Hawkins forever be remembered, and may he rest in power. May his memory forever be a blessing. So the RNC begins their convention tomorrow. It's going to be 4 days of madness and mayhem and racism and misogyny and lies and bitterness and anger and fear and division. I mean, is there really a need to preview the Republican National Convention? It's going to be something like it was last time, 4 years ago in Cleveland. Now, this year with the pandemic, we don't know where the hell the Republicans are going to be doing their convention, because they were initially supposed to do it in Charlotte, North Carolina. Then they couldn't do that. Then they wanted to do it in Florida. Then they got rejected there. Jacksonville said no. Then they went back to Charlotte, kind of, North Carolina, kind of. And we don't even really know that that's going to be the case. Now we're hearing that Donald Trump's acceptance speech is going to be given either in the White House or on the White House lawn. Technically, he is allowed to do that. Technically, he is allowed to, because the Hatch Act does not apply to the president, which I think is just stupid. I mean, that's just insane. How could it not? It's just, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But he is going to be giving his speech at the White House, I think, from the Oval Office. So that's going to be a first. I don't think that's ever been done before by someone who is currently occupying the White House. So that's Thursday's nightmare coming. But what about the other 3 days? Well, I guess tonight or today, Fox or the Republicans, but Fox, same difference, gave us the Republican National Convention key speakers. And essentially there's 12 of them, and almost half of them, practically half of them, are from the Trump family. In fact, half of them are. Of the 12 people who are listed as convention key speakers for the Republicans coming up tomorrow, of the 12 of them, exactly half of them are Trump family members, including Donald Trump. I mean, this is basically the core of Republicans he has supporting him now. His family and the diehards, the lackeys and the sycophants. It's incredible that Mitch McConnell is not on that list. And all of these older Republicans have chosen to stay well the hell away from anything, remote or otherwise, when it comes to Donald Trump and this convention, which I think is going to be an absolute horror show. I can't conceive of this convention being about anything other than what I just said a few moments ago that it would be about. Fear, hate, division, lies, racism, sexism, misogyny. Us against them. It's going to be about all those things. And here are the 12 speakers. You've got Donald Trump. You've got Vice President Pence, Nikki Haley. Now, it remains to be seen if Nikki Haley is going to be the new VP candidate, because it's very possible that Donald Trump could dump Mike Pence. And loyalty means nothing to Donald Trump. The only loyalty he likes is when you're loyal to him. But the other way around, he doesn't have any of that in his bones. So there's a possibility that Mike Pence could be dropped like a hot rock at this convention. And that would make headlines. I have a real feeling that if anything comes out of this convention, it's going to be that Nikki Haley will come out of the convention as the VP nominee for the Republicans. I think that's a very likely scenario. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that Donald Trump has not already done this. But I think he's going to do this. What do you think? I am going to put up a poll on Twitter at the Popcorn REEL. And I'm going to ask you, do you think that Nikki Haley will be on the ticket by the time the Republican National Convention is over with? And it's a simple yes or no. I'm also thinking of asking that question slightly differently. Who will be the vice presidential nominee? Will it be Haley or Pence? That's another way to ask that same question. So, in one way or another, when you log on to Twitter, please follow me at the Popcorn REEL, and you will be able to find that poll question. Because I have a feeling that Nikki Haley is going to be picked. I really do. Trump can say all he wants. Oh, Pence has done a great job and he's doing great things. That means nothing. Donald Trump's someone who will do anything to make sure that he stays in the White House because, of course, there is a prison cell and some handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit awaiting him once he loses to Joe Biden, and I hope he does. I think he will. There just has to be higher voter turnout. That's what the Democrats have to do. They've got now a chance to turn out their base, and they've got to turn them out in droves and educate them. But these speakers, these key speakers at the RNC this coming week, starting tomorrow, Donald Trump will obviously speak on Thursday. Vice President Mike Pence, I'm suspecting, will be on Wednesday, or maybe it's Nikki Haley on a Wednesday. Then you've got Kevin McCarthy. He's the Republican minority leader in the House. Joni Ernst, whose campaign is basically on life support now, she's running for Senate in Iowa, and she's in some trouble there. She is hoping, I think, that the speaking engagement will help to raise her profile in Iowa with the voters. I don't think it's going to work. Tim Scott, the only African American at all that is in the key speakers, and may be the only African American at the convention. Diamond and Silk have been jettisoned from Fox News, so I don't know if they're going to be showing up at the convention. There'll probably be a couple of other black people speaking somewhere. And it won't be from inside a janitor's office. Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, no surprise there. There was even talk that she would be entertained as the vice presidential nominee, and that there was concern in the Pence camp that Donald Trump was making overtures to Kristi Noem, the South Dakota governor. And she's the one who refused to close down a state, who had all these meat packing places with people infected with COVID-19, and she kept them all open, and she had to be forced to finally close those or have the companies close them. I mean, Kristi Noem is an absolute disaster as a governor. Why on earth would you put her in that position? I mean, well, I should say the same thing about what Trump did with Pence. I mean, Pence was a disaster as Indiana governor. He was going to lose his re-election bid, and Trump pulled him off the scrap heap. And the rest is history. What a creepy human being Mike Pence is, huh? Have you seen that ad from Don Winslow from last week or so? Mother Pence. Oh my God, that is a creepy horror show. I mean, that Pence, man, you want to talk about dysfunctional. Oh my Lord, that's his wife, Karen Pence, the second lady. And God, it's this Norman Bates thing going on. It's just, she won't allow him to eat on his own with women without her being present. I mean, this is some scary, creepy ass stuff. Good Lord, I'm surprised. Well, it's just crazy. It's just bizarre. Melania Trump will be speaking as well. Ivanka Trump will be speaking as well. Donald Trump Jr. will be speaking as well. Eric Trump will be speaking as well. Tiffany Trump will be speaking as well. I mean, that's 6 out of 12 people listed as key speakers. Now, there may be more key speakers, but those are the 12 via Fox News. And so can you really trust Fox News to tell you anything true? I mean, come on. The Trumps can't. You can't trust any of these folks. I'm surprised that Jared Kushner's not listed. I mean, I think this is going to be a very bland convention. I can tell you that the other speakers that are going to be there are the two white people, that white couple in St. Louis, Missouri, I think, in Missouri, who got on their lawn and did their Clint Eastwood shtick with their, Dirty Harry, go ahead, make my day routine. They with the gun and the handgun and the assault rifle or whatever it was, the shotgun, sitting out there with a rifle and pointing it at protesters who are walking by. They're looking for the mayor of St. Louis. They're looking to protest the mayor. The embattled mayor. And you got this woman and this man, these two fools, standing out there with guns, pointing them. And by the way, they've been indicted for weapons, for criminal menacing. And they're going to be invited to speak at the RNC, and they are expected to make that appearance. Can you imagine? What, are they going to appear with their guns? Are they going to speak from their home with their guns strapped to them? I mean, can't you just picture, since this is going to be remote, and although there's talk that the RNC is trying to get live human beings on the South Lawn to partake in this convention, particularly when Trump speaks on Thursday. I mean, can you imagine these two racists with their guns talking to you with their guns strapped to their bodies or their guns in the background. I mean, I can just picture that, and it's not the kind of picture that I think you as a Republican want to be sending to the rest of the country, unless you're intent on scaring the country, which is what the Republican Party is going to be doing all week long. So you can also expect to see the white guy, I think he is 19 or 20 or 21, who stood, remember when that white guy, Nicholas Sandman, I think is his name, and he stood there staring and smirking like an idiot with his MAGA hat on at the Native Americans who were, I forgot where this was in the country, but in the USA, but they were there on their land, and they were, or wherever they were, and they were playing their drums, they were performing a ritual of some kind or a ceremony, and these jackasses, these white guys in MAGA hats, these jackasses coming up there and just being belligerent and racist and angry and arrogant and rude. And one of them just, Nicholas Windman, comes right up to, whatever the heck his name is, comes right up to one of the Native American individuals, and he is playing his drum, and he comes right up in his face and smirks at him. Just stares him down and smirks at him. I mean, this is the kind of thing, this is the hatred that you are going to be getting. He is going to speak at the convention as well this week. Expect a lot of lies. Expect Donald Trump to talk badly about the Democrats and lie his ass off in the process. Expect him to talk about how great the economy is, which it's not. The economy sucks right now. Expect him to conflate the stock market with and into the economy, which you can't, because the stock market isn't about the economy. The stock market is about investors. You have 30 stocks in the Dow Jones Index. That's 30 companies. That's what the Dow is. It's not about GDP. It's not about unemployment. It's not about any of that. It's about investors making money off 30 companies in the Dow Jones Index, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. DJIA, that's what that is. It's got nothing to do with the economy. It's a casino on Wall Street. That's what it is. It's a Wall Street casino. He will lie to you about that at this Republican convention. He will lie to you about jobs. He will ignore the fact that there are millions of people going on food lines, millions of people who are going to be evicted from their homes, and if their homes foreclosed on, he's going to ignore all of that. He's going to ignore the unemployment numbers and the fact that 50 million people are out of work. He's going to ignore the fact that there's a Republican Great Depression going on. He's going to ignore all of that, and he's going to lie to you and say that the Democrats hate the country. And, it's going to project everything that he really feels onto the Democrats. And there'll be red meat thrown around, of course. You're not going to see this cuddly, warm family at this convention. You're not. You're not going to see any cuddling, or you're going to see this cold, distant, out of touch group of Trumps, as you've heard in these audio tapes already. I'm not excited about this convention at all. I am really holding my breath, and maybe I shouldn't be, but I think there's going to be some really bad things going on in that convention. And I know I've been a bit of a doomsayer lately. Yesterday's episode I was talking about, well, there may be violence. There's probably going to be violence after the election. God, even the night of, God forbid. But I think this convention, there's going to be some stuff going on. And I just hope that the people who are organizing this stuff and they have security and all, I hope they just keep their eyes on things, because there are some really unstable, as I said yesterday in the episode I did, there's some really unstable people out here. It's really scary. And people do not care anymore, because this coronavirus, he's not even going to talk about that. He's going to pretend that that doesn't exist. 180,000 people on his watch. come on. God's sake, man. 180,000 human beings dead in this country on your watch. For God's sake, man. But of course, he's not going to talk about coronavirus. Remember, he said it would go away by April when the weather got warmer. Oh, one day like a miracle, it'll just magically disappear. Well, you're going to be disappearing and it won't be a miracle. It will be a godsend this November. And when you're finally out of that White House next January. We have got to work hard, though, everybody. We cannot take it for granted. This convention is going to be an absolute joke this week. And I hope you are ready to take a couple of extra showers each night if you choose to watch it. There are actually going to be some Republican groups who are anti-Trump who are going to be doing their own counter-programming during these next 4 days starting tomorrow. And can you blame them? If you don't want to watch the disaster that is sure to be the Republican National Convention beginning tomorrow, then may I advise you to spend time educating yourself on voting and getting other people to vote. By doing so, well, you just do Zooms, you do chats, you do whatever, social media chats. And make sure you get young people to register to vote and then get them out to the polls. It is critical. And obviously, young people are more apt to listen to perhaps other young people rather than adults, although they will listen to some adults who've been through the wars that they respect. But in any event, we've got to encourage youth participation because this is their future, and we can't allow some stupid people to be talking to them and lying about what's at stake. These dangerous people who sit there and what's in it for me? What's in it for us? And you don't hear from them all year. You know, these last 3.5 years, where the hell were some of these rappers? I'm not even going to mention their names. You know who they are. Where the hell were some of these people? There's at least 3 or 4 of them that I can think of right now. And by the way, there's a rapper who is smart, and his name is Eminem. I'll mention his name. He knows where his bread is buttered. That guy has got his head screwed on straight. And so is Snoop Dogg, for that matter. He's smart. He's got his head screwed on straight. You don't hear him talking that foolishness that some of these other rappers are talking. Both of those guys made songs or albums about Trump and about, getting him out of here, so to speak. But there's going to be a lot of propaganda, a lot of Nazi saluting and Klan hood waving and tiki torch waving and Charlottesville reunions. I mean, this is what you've got now. I mean, it's going to be ugly, folks. Just warning you. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I am Omar Moore.